Here to tell you, don't believe the cynicism. Guard against it. Don't buy into it. Today I want to use one case study to show you that progress is possible and perseverance is critical. I want to show you how badly we need you, both your individual voices and your collective efforts, to give you the chance you seek to change the world and maybe even save it. I'm going to talk about one of the most significant long-term challenges that our country and our planet faces: the growing threat of a rapidly changing climate. Now, this isn't a policy speech, I understand it's a commencement, and I already delivered a long climate address last summer. I remember because it was 95 degrees, and my staff had me do it outside, and I was pouring with sweat as a visual aid. And since this is a very educated group, you already know the science. Burning fossil fuels releases carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide traps heat. Levels of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere are higher than they've been in 800,000 years. We know the trends. The 18 warmest years on record have all happened since you graduates were born. We know what we see with our own eyes. Out west, firefighters brave longer, harsher wildfire seasons. States have to budget for that. Smaller snowpacks mean for tourism. Farmers and families at the bottom worry about what it will mean for their water. In cities like Norfolk and Miami, streets now flood frequently at high tide. Shrinking ice caps have National Geographic making the biggest change in its atlas since the Soviet Union broke apart. So the question is not whether we need to act. The overwhelming judgment of science, accumulated and measured and reviewed over decades, has put that question to rest. The question is whether we have the will to act before it's too late. Or if we fail to protect the world we leave, not just to my children, but to your children and your children's children, we will fail one of our primary reasons for being on this world in the first place. And that is to leave the world a little bit better for the next generation. Now the good news is you already know all this. UC Irvine set up the first Earth System Science Department in America. A UC Irvine professor student team won the Nobel Prize for discovering that CFCs destroy the ozone layer. A UC Irvine glaciologist's work led to one of last month's reports showing one of the world's major ice sheets in irreversible retreat. Students and professors are in the field working to predict changing weather patterns, fire seasons, and water tables, working to understand how shifting seasons affect global ecosystems, to get zero-emission vehicles on the road faster, to help coastal communities adapt to rising seas. And when I challenge colleges to reduce their energy use 20% by 2020, UC Irvine went ahead and did it last year. Done. So UC Irvine's ahead of the curve. All of you are ahead of the curve. Your generation reminds me of something President Wilson once said. He said, "Sometimes people call me an idealist. Well, that is the way I know I am an American." That's who we are. If you need a reason to be optimistic about our future, then look around this stadium, because today in America, the largest single age group is 22 years old. And you are going to do great things. And I want you to know that I've got your back. Because one of the reasons I ran for this office was because I believed our dangerous addiction to foreign oil left our economy at risk and our planet in peril. So when I took office, we set out to use more clean energy and less dirty energy and waste less energy overall. And since then, we've doubled the distance our cars will go on a gallon of gas by the middle of the next decade. We've tripled the electricity we harness from the wind, generating enough last year to power every home in California. We've multiplied the electricity we generate from the sun 10 times over. And this state, California, is so far ahead of the rest of the country in solar that earlier this year, solar power met 18% of your total power demand one day. The bottom line is America produces more renewable energy than ever. More natural gas than anyone. And for the first time in nearly 2 decades, we produce more oil here at home than we buy from other countries. And these advances have created jobs and grown our economy and helped cut our carbon pollution to levels not seen in about 20 years. Since 2006, no country on earth has reduced its total carbon pollution by as much as the United States of America. So that's all reason for optimism. Here's the challenge. We've got to do more. What we're doing is not enough. That's why a couple of weeks ago, America proposed new standards to limit the amount of harmful carbon pollution that power plants can dump into the air. We also have to realize, as hundreds of scientists declared last month, that climate change is no longer a distant threat, but has moved firmly into the present. That's a quote. In some parts of the country, weather-related disasters like droughts and fires and storms and floods are going to get harsher and they're going to get costlier. And that's why today I'm announcing a new $1 billion competitive fund to help communities prepare for the impacts of climate change and build more resilient infrastructure across the country. So it's a big problem. But progress, no matter how big the problem, is possible. That's important to remember, because no matter what you do in life, you're going to run up against big problems in your own personal life and in your communities and in your country. There's going to be a stubborn status quo, and there are going to be people determined to stymie your efforts to bring about change. There are going to be people who say you can't do something. There are going to be people who say you shouldn't bother. I've got some experience in this myself. Now, part of what's unique about climate change, though, is the nature of some of the opposition to action. It's pretty rare that you'll encounter somebody who says the problem you're trying to solve simply doesn't exist. When President Kennedy set us on a course for the moon, there were a number of people who made a serious case that it wouldn't be worth it. It was going to be too expensive, it was going to be too hard, it would take too long. But nobody ignored the science. I don't remember anybody saying that the moon wasn't there or that it was made of cheese. Today's Congress, though, is full of folks who stubbornly and automatically reject the scientific evidence about climate change. They will tell you it is a hoax or a fad. One member of Congress actually says the world is cooling. There was one member of Congress who mentioned a theory involving dinosaur flatulence, which I won't get into, but their view may be wrong and a fairly serious threat to everybody's future, but at least they have the brass to say what they actually think. There's some who also duck the question. They say, when they're asked about climate change, they say, hey, look, I'm not a scientist. And I'll translate that for you. What that really means is, I know that man-made climate change really is happening, but if I admit it, I'll be run out of town by a radical fringe that thinks climate science is a liberal plot, so I'm not going to admit it. Now,